Good day, folks. Welcome to Andrew's Life. Well, I just want to make another video talking more about uh, Donald Trump, I guess. I made a video the other day titled, Should Black People Fear an Increase of Racism Under Trump? Now, there were a few of you that agreed with my take on the whole Donald Trump thing, but there were also quite a few of you that disagreed with what I said. There were a bunch of you that stated, well, because Donald Trump did not have any blacks in his cabinet, that was an indication that that racism under Trump was going to be worse than it was under Biden and Harris. Now, for those of you that are thinking like that, let me ask you guys a question. Under the Biden and Harris administration, okay, there may have been some blacks that were in their cabinet. My question to you, however, is what benefit did that have on average, everyday, working class black Americans like myself and like you? Ask yourself that question. Now, if you ask me that question, I'll tell you that it had no benefit whatsoever. Now, there were a lot of you that did believe that racism was going to increase and be worse under Donald Trump. And yes, I am aware of the fact that apparently there's been letters that have been texted to many African Americans on their phone talking about report to the corporate plantation or something like that. And these letters have been targeted only to black people. Now, my question about those letters is, how does anybody know that those letters are truly from people that are in support of Donald Trump? How do we know that those letters are not from people that are upset about the loss of Harris? And just to give the illusion of people who vote for Donald Trump being a bunch of bigots and racists, they sent those letters out to black people. How do we know? Because every time I hear a story about those letters, there's never any, no one ever knows who wrote that letter. There's never any arrest or anything. So it's kind of like, whoever wrote these letters and text these letters to blacks in the United States, it's almost like the person is a ghost. No one seems to know who they are, where they're at, or anything. So until it is found out who these people are, my take on all that is, how do we know that this individual or these individuals are not people that are in support of Harris and they feel some kind of way because Harris lost? How do we know? We don't know. And yeah, it could be people that were in support of Trump. But I don't know. We don't at this point nobody really knows. And thirdly, there's people like this individual, which I'm gonna play a quick video and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna continue to speak.
Asking me if I speak English and if I'm American, get the out of my face.
You're the one
Get
that's
the
stupid. You.
Go
Go back to
yourself.
Asia. Go back to Asia.
Go
Let's nuke
back
you.
to your
Nuke you.
asshole.
Trump, God bless Trump. We're gonna nuke you guys. You. 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 You're ugly and you have a flat face and an ugly nose. Flat face and an ugly
Then
nose.
why are you talking to me, asshole?
Fat
Then
face
why
and
the
a
are you
nose.
talking to me?
Flat face and ugly nose. And guess what? You guys have small dicks. Try to beat that. You can't.
All right, folks. Well, you guys saw that 35-second video, which was very disgusting. And I do have to admit that yes, there are certain people of the white community that they somehow feel that because Donald Trump is getting ready to be back in office, that they can go out here and act however they want to act, do whatever they want to do, and somehow they're going to be protected because of Donald Trump. And let me explain something to everybody here. Now, for those of you that are of the white community and you somehow relate to that disgusting piece of crap, listen to me very closely. And of course, for those of you that are black, listen to me closely as well. Now, if anyone such as that individual that you guys just saw on the video decides to commit a hate crime, and the states where that individual resides decides to charge them for a hate crime, which I hope the hell they do if that were to happen. If somebody like him were to be charged for a hate crime, I guarantee that Donald Trump is not going to have their back. They're going to have to suffer the consequences. Whatever sentence that the judge hands them, they're going to have to deal with it. Donald Trump is not going to bail them out of jail or prison. Donald Trump is not going to fight for those type of individuals. I hate to say it, but it does appear to me that, yeah, you do got sectors of the white community that are going to be a little bit more emboldened with their bigotry now that Donald Trump is getting ready to go back into the White House. But like I said, people who get out here and they behave in a manner that's bigot like, and they decide to commit some sort of hate crime that might cost somebody their life, or it might injure somebody severely, and they happen to reside in a state to where they might get hit with a hate crime charge, Donald Trump is not going to save those individuals. These individuals are going to have to face the music on their own. If the judge decides, okay, well, this individual is going to get 10, 20 years or whatever in the penitentiary, guess what? Donald Trump is not doing crap for these individuals. Donald Trump is not even going to do as much as put money on their books when they get locked up. And Donald Trump is the president of the United States. I mean, he will be the president of the United States. He's a federal figure. So if someone commits a hate crime, really, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the states to impose the proper charges on people that commit hate crimes. It's going to be up to the state. So let's say somebody like that individual that you saw on that 35-second video decides to commit a hate crime, and they decide to delete somebody because he didn't like the fact that they were black or Asian or Hispanic or whatever the case might be. You know, if he commits that crime in a state to where, let's say they give the suspect something super ridiculous like 5 years in prison, that will have not a thing to do with Donald Trump. That will be completely the doing of the states where that suspect resides. Because that type of a crime is going to be a state level crime 9 times out of 10. So that's another thing which I believe a lot of people don't quite understand. When a hate crime happens, in most cases, it's going to be a state type of a situation. It's going to be up to the states to properly punish and prosecute people that commit hate crimes within their state. It's not going to have anything to do with Donald Trump. Now, could Donald Trump do certain things to help deter hate crimes from going on? Of course he can. Of course he can. Now, one thing which he could do, which I'm not going to hold my breath on it, but one thing he could do is just like what the Biden administration did for the Asian community and for the Pacific Islanders, for all black people who live in the United States. He can pose a anti-hate crime bill for black people. I mean, that's one thing that Donald Trump can do. But again, I'm not holding my breath. But, that's one thing he can do, and I will admit to that. And another thing that I want to point out is I also want to point out the fact that there are a ton of white Trump supporters who are not like the individual that you guys saw on that 35-second video. How do I know that? Well, I made a video, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months ago, sharing my story of how I was adopted. So if you want to go back and watch that video, feel free to do so. But in a nutshell, I was adopted at age 5. I was adopted into a family to where my adoptive parents, were white. And my adoptive parents, they adopted 4 of us. And not one of us are white. They adopted me, because I'm the youngest. Obviously, I'm black. Then after me, and then after me, my sister, she's biracial. My brother, he's also biracial, black and white. And my older sister, R.I.P., she passed away, but she was Puerto Rican. Now, my parents, when they were alive, they both were die-hard conservatives / Republicans. Anytime they went and they put their vote in, it was always for a Republican. Whether it had been the local or state or federal level, whenever my parents voted, they always voted Republican. In fact, the majority of the friends that they had were also Republican. The neighborhood which I grew up in, I mean, there were a mix of people that were both Republican and Democrat. But even the neighbors that were Republican were nice, decent, ordinary people. Like all this crazy stuff that you guys are seeing right now of some of these white folks just I don't know what you would call it, that is out here doing the most because they know that Donald Trump is getting ready to become president again. So they're showing themselves, I guess you can say. Those are not the type of white folks that my parents ever were, obviously. Those are not the type of white folks that lived in the community where I grew up in. And by the way, I grew up in Elyria, Ohio. And the neighborhood where I grew up in, the neighborhood was integrated. And the majority of the people that voted conservative in that community, I mean, they were conservative, but they weren't the type of conservatives like you saw on that 35-second video. They weren't running around calling people names. They weren't running around acting bigot-like. They were just normal working class people. And I would even go as far as saying the majority of your white conservatives, they voted for Donald Trump for many of the same reasons why somebody like myself voted for Donald Trump, and that is A, we're concerned about the American economy. B, we're concerned about the safety at our borders. And C, we don't like the idea of our hard worked tax dollars to go towards people that don't belong in this country. We rather have our tax dollars go towards the needs and concerns of American citizens. I mean, in a nutshell, those are the main reasons why why the majority of your white Trump supporters voted for Donald Trump. Now, do you have white Trump supporters that are way out there in left field that think because Donald Trump is coming back in the White House, they could enact their bigot ways? Of course you do. And sadly, we're going to start to see some of the shenanigans they pull as time goes by once Trump gets elected. Some of these people apparently, according to some of you in the comment section of the last video that I made, apparently there's already certain people of the white community that are showing their ugly self. But from my experience, I would say the majority of white Trump supporters are not in support of Donald Trump because they think that Donald Trump is a racist. They're in support of Donald Trump because of his policies. And just because Donald Trump may not have anybody black in his cabinet does not automatically make him a racist president. A lot of you would disagree, and that's perfectly okay. But I don't think that Donald Trump not having anybody black in his cabinet is automatically going to make him a racist. It's kind of like when the Democrat Party has black people in their cabinet, it doesn't mean that they're going to do any more for black people than the Republicans would. Which the Democrat Party, I mean, yeah, they have black people in the cabinet, but they didn't do anything at all for black Americans. They couldn't even give black Americans or black people an anti-hate crime bill. Like when they gave the Asian and the Pacific Islanders a hate crime bill, I think it was back in 2021, the first year they got into office, Biden and Harris. My question is, why didn't they include black people on that hate crime bill, given that black people are actually more so a victim of hate crimes than Asians and Pacific Islanders ever had been within this country? How come we didn't get included on that hate crime bill? That's what I'm saying. Just because the Harris and Biden administration may have some black people, it does not make them any less of a racist than someone who might have a cabinet with no black people. Or to put it another way, someone that Donald Trump not having anybody black in his cabinet, it doesn't make him more racist, or it doesn't make him racist at all. But anyway, I guess one of the reasons why I can't bring myself to just automatically agree with what some of you guys say about Donald Trump, about white Trump supporters, is because of the way I grew up. Like I said, I was adopted at age 5 into a family. My adopted parents were white. Both of them were big time Republicans / conservatives. A lot of our neighbors, I mean, yeah, we had a lot of Democrat neighbors, but we also had a lot of conservative / Republican neighbors as well. In fact, when I was growing up, a lot of my friends You know, they came from families to where their parents were conservative. A lot of my friends when I was growing up were white. So I just can't bring myself to just automatically believe that the typical white Trump supporter is racist or prejudiced towards black people. And that's the only reason why they voted for Donald Trump. Now, granted, there are white folks who are like that. There are white folks who are ignorant like that. But from my experience, I would say the majority of white folks who voted for Trump for reasons that were a lot more logical than them assuming that Trump was a racist. And I guess this video, I mean, and I guess this video, for those of you guys that have been listening to the entire video so far, can also help explain why I do not fear racism getting any worse under Donald Trump compared to what it was already under the Harris and Joe Biden administration. Because, like I said, and another thing is, I know sometimes it's impossible for any of us to avoid people that we don't want to deal with, but typically I try to stay in environments to where people who act like that guy that you saw on that 35-second video, I try to avoid dealing with people like him. I try to avoid living in areas to where people like him are going to most likely reside. So no, I do not fear the increase of racism. I do not fear racism once Donald Trump gets into the White House. Because for reasons that I've discussed throughout this video. And also throughout the last video that I made a couple of days ago. So that's all I gotta say on this one. I went a little longer than I've anticipated, but I just wanted to get this off my chest. I just want to get it off my chest. I just felt this video was necessary for me to make. I know a lot of you guys are going to still disagree with me, and that's perfectly okay. But for a few of you, hopefully this video helps explain why I felt the way I felt on the last video that I made about this topic. Stay blessed. I'll catch you guys on the next one.